On a sunny afternoon in 1995 in Pittsburgh, a middle-aged man named MacArthur Wheeler decided to execute an audacious plan. He was going to rob two banks, in broad daylight, without a mask. He even smiled at the security cameras before walking out with the cash. When the police arrested him later that night, Wheeler didn't resist. Instead, he was completely bewildered. He reportedly sputtered, "But I wore the juice, you see." Wheeler was under the absolute conviction that because lemon juice is used as invisible ink, rubbing it on his face would render him invisible to cameras. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't desperation. This was a steadfast belief. His confidence was 100%. His competence was 0. The case of MacArthur Wheeler sounds extreme, almost comical, but the terrifying truth is that, every single day, all of us are wearing the juice in our own way. We make disastrous financial decisions. We argue passionately about topics we only vaguely understand, and we confidently stride into situations for which we are utterly unprepared. We are living in a paradox. Never before in human history have we had access to so much information, yet never before have we been so surrounded by misplaced confidence. There is a profound psychological reason for this phenomenon, a cognitive blind spot that renders us incapable of seeing our own incompetence. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and in this video, we're not just going to dissect why it happens. We're going to explore why intelligent people are often its worst victims, how it's shaping our world, and most importantly, how you can develop the self-awareness to escape its trap, because without this understanding, you risk remaining stranded in the most dangerous place in the world, a place we call Mount Stupid. Welcome to the Psych Blueprint. If you've ever sat in a meeting and listened to someone speak with absolute authority on a topic, you know for a fact they don't understand. You've witnessed the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you've ever scrolled through social media and felt a deep, visceral sense of outrage at the sheer confidence of people sharing blatant misinformation, you know the feeling. It's easy to feel angry. It's easy to feel superior. You look at these individuals and think, how can they be so lacking in self-awareness? That frustration is valid. It's exhausting. We crave competence. We crave truth. And when we see people operating without either, it feels like an affront to the natural order of things. But here is the uncomfortable truth we must confront. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't about them. It's about us. Let's define it clearly. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability at a specific task tend to overestimate their ability. Sounds simple, right? But the implications are profound. Why does it happen? Is it ego? Is it pure stupidity? Not exactly. The core issue lies in something called metacognition, or thinking about your own thinking. It's the ability to step back and objectively evaluate your own performance. And here's the critical insight. The skills needed to be good at something are often the exact same skills needed to judge whether you are good at it. Think about writing. If you don't know how to structure a coherent paragraph, then you don't just write poorly. You also lack the mental tools to recognize that you write poorly. You read your own work and think, looks fine to me. This is why confronting our own incompetence is so painful. It's not just a minor adjustment to your self-perception. It's a disruption of your worldview. To admit you are wrong, you have to develop an entirely new skill set just to see how wrong you were. And this doesn't just apply to poor performers. There's a fascinating flip side to Dunning-Kruger that affects genuine experts. People who are truly excellent at something often underestimate their ability relative to others. They assume that if something is easy for them, it must be easy for everyone else too. The crucial takeaway is that this is not an intelligence issue. You can be a brilliant physicist and still fall victim to Dunning-Kruger when discussing foreign policy. It is domain-specific. We all have islands of competence, surrounded by an ocean of unconscious incompetence. To navigate that ocean, we need a more accurate map. And there is a specific mental model used by some of the world's most successful thinkers that can help us draw that map. But first, we need to understand the mechanics of the trap itself. The bizarre case of MacArthur Wheeler, the lemon juice bank robber, inspired To social psychologists at Cornell University, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, they were fascinated by Wheeler's absolute confidence despite his obvious failure. In 1999, they published a landmark paper titled Unskilled and Unaware of It. They conducted a series of experiments. They tested students on grammar, logical reasoning, and humor. In each area, they asked the subjects to take the test and then to estimate how well they did compared to others. The results were staggering. The people in the bottom 25% consistently overestimated their abilities. They thought they were around the 62nd percentile, while their actual scores were closer to the 12th percentile. They weren't just slightly wrong, they were spectacularly wrong. Conversely, those in the top 25% actually slightly underestimated their performance. They knew they were good, but they didn't realize how rare their knowledge was. When you graph this out, you see something that has become iconic in psychology. The x-axis is knowledge. The y-axis is confidence. The curve is not linear. When you first start learning something new, your confidence skyrockets almost immediately. You learn a few basic terms and suddenly you think, oh, I get it. This is pretty easy. This is that first high peak. Mount stupid. It's the most dangerous place because you have just enough knowledge to be confident, but not enough knowledge to recognize the risks. It's the new investor after a few lucky wins thinking they are the next Warren Buffett. But as you keep learning, you start to realize how complex the topic actually is, and your confidence plummets. This is the valley of despair. This is where most people quit. They realize it's harder than they thought, and their ego takes a hit. However, if you persist, you start building genuine competence. Your confidence starts to rise again, but this time, it's based on actual skill. This is the slope of enlightenment leading to the plateau of sustainability. Why do our brains do this? The mechanism revolves around three key concepts: the double curse, feedback, and ego motivation. First, the double curse. This is the core of the metacognition problem. The deficit in skill is simultaneously a deficit in the ability to recognize that deficit. If you lack the ability to recognize a sound argument, how can you possibly know that your own argument is unsound? It's a self-reinforcing loop. Your incompetence blinds you to your own incompetence. Dunning often uses an analogy called anosognosia, a medical condition where someone suffers brain damage and cannot recognize that they are impaired. Dunning-Kruger is like a temporary, domain-specific anosognosia for our knowledge. Second, the role of feedback. You might think the real world will correct these misjudgments, but feedback in the real world is often ambiguous or non-existent. When you tell a bad joke, people usually laugh politely. Third, ego motivation. We have a deep psychological need to maintain a positive self-image. When confronted with evidence that we are incompetent, our brains work overtime to protect that ego. We dismiss the feedback. We blame external factors. If our project fails, it's because of the market, not because our strategy was flawed. This combination creates a perfect storm of unconscious incompetence. But there was a glimmer of hope in Dunning and Kruger's research. They found that when poor performers were trained in the skills they lacked, they not only got better at the task, they also got better at judging their own ability. Education is the antidote to illusion. Now, it's crucial to address some common misconceptions. Dunning-Kruger is a nuanced concept, and it's often abused. First, Dunning-Kruger is not a tool for insulting others. If you're using the term just to win an argument, you're missing the point. Remember, it affects everyone. If you think it doesn't apply to you, that's probably the clearest sign that it does. Second, it's not directly related to IQ. You can be highly intelligent and still overestimate your abilities in specific domains. Third, there is some academic debate. Some researchers argue it might just be a statistical artifact. However, the psychological phenomenon of inflated self-assessment among the low-skilled is real and observable. Finally, we need to talk about imposter syndrome. This is the persistent feeling that you are a fraud despite objective evidence of your competence. This is often the inverse of Dunning-Kruger, affecting high achievers. Recall the flip side of the chart. Experts tend to underestimate their abilities. This is due to the false consensus effect. They assume everyone knows what they know. Experts are aware of how much they don't know. This awareness of their knowledge gaps can make them feel inadequate. So, we have an ironic situation. The people who know the least are often the most confident, while the people who know the most are often filled with self-doubt. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just abstract. It is real, sometimes catastrophic, consequences. Consider medicine. Studies found that first-year medical residents often overestimate their proficiency in basic procedures. In a high-stakes environment, this misplaced confidence can lead to critical errors. In the financial world, the impact is even more visible. New investors often fall into the Mount Stupid trap. They make a few successful trades based on luck, and suddenly they think they've found the secret to quick riches. They take on bigger risks and often lose everything when the market corrects. In leadership, managers who overestimate their skills often create toxic work environments. They fail to recognize the negative impact of their actions and make flawed strategic decisions. But perhaps the most profound impact is at the societal level. Dunning-Kruger creates an environment where expertise is often dismissed by confident but uninformed individuals. When people believe their limited understanding of a complex topic is just as valid as decades of research, the foundation of an informed society begins to crumble. Misinformation spreads rapidly, and solving complex problems becomes impossible. Consider the rise of anti-science movements. Individuals read a few blog posts, watch a few videos, and reach the summit of Mount Stupid. They view any contradictory evidence as part of a conspiracy. This is Dunning-Kruger at scale. The cost of unconscious incompetence isn't just personal embarrassment. It's the erosion of truth and the danger of catastrophic decisions. So, how do we fight back? How do we recalibrate our cognitive maps and develop genuine wisdom? The goal is not to destroy confidence. The goal is to ensure your confidence is aligned with your competence. The key is intellectual humility. Intellectual humility is the willingness to acknowledge that you might be wrong, that your knowledge is limited, and that your perspective is subject to change. It's valuing truth over ego. Here are 4 practical strategies to cultivate intellectual humility and combat the Dunning-Kruger effect. Strategy 1. Define your circle of competence. This is the mental model I mentioned earlier, popularized by Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Imagine a circle that contains all your deep expertise and understanding. The key insight is that the size of the circle is not as important as knowing its boundaries. Buffett attributes his success to knowing exactly what he doesn't know and strictly staying within his circle. The discipline to say "I don't know" or "this is outside my circle" is a superpower in a world of misplaced confidence. Action step: conduct a knowledge audit. Be brutally honest about your boundaries. When faced with a decision outside that circle, default to deference or further research, not intuition. Strategy 2. Adopt the scout mindset. Psychologist Julia Gallup describes 2 approaches to thinking: the soldier mindset and the scout mindset. The soldier mindset: our default is about defending our beliefs at all costs. We are motivated to prove ourselves right. The scout mindset is about seeking objective truth, like a scout trying to draw an accurate map. Action step: to shift into the scout mindset. Ask yourself, if I were wrong, would I want to know? When arguing emotionally, pause and ask, am I trying to defend my position, or am I trying to understand reality? Prioritize curiosity over consistency. Strategy 3. Seek disconfirming evidence. Our brains naturally seek information that confirms what we already believe. Confirmation bias. To counteract this, you must actively seek out information that proves you wrong. Action step: practice the devil's advocate. Before making a significant decision, argue against it as forcefully as possible. If you're considering an investment, don't just read the bullish reports. Seek out the most pessimistic analysis you can find. Strategy 4. Conduct the pre-mortem. When we are on Mount Stupid, we are often blinded by optimism. A powerful technique to counteract this is the pre-mortem. developed by psychologist Gary Klein. Action step: before you start a project, imagine it is a year in the future and the project has failed spectacularly. Ask, what happened? Why did it fail? This exercise forces you to confront the ways your confidence might be misplaced. You are building humility into your decision-making process. Implementing these strategies is not easy. It requires conscious effort and a willingness to be uncomfortable. But the payoff is immense: clearer self-awareness, better decision-making, and a path toward genuine mastery. The story of MacArthur Wheeler, the lemon juice bank robber, is more than just a tale of stupidity. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked confidence. It's a stark reminder that we are all capable of spectacular self-deception. We live in a world that celebrates confidence and often dismisses doubt. We are taught to fake it till we make it, but as the Dunning-Kruger effect shows us, this mindset is often a trap. It leads to stagnation, poor decisions, and the erosion of truth. True wisdom doesn't lie in knowing all the answers. It lies in recognizing the limits of your own knowledge and embracing the discomfort of learning. As David Dunning himself put it, the first step toward correcting a mistake is recognizing that you are making one. The journey off Mount Stupid is not a what-time trip. It's a continuous process of self-reflection, learning, and calibration. There will be times when you realize you've overestimated your abilities yet again, and that's okay. Every time you recognize it, you are becoming wiser. So I leave you with this challenge. Find the one area in your life where you are most confident and start questioning it. Seek out the disconfirming evidence. Embrace intellectual humility, because ultimately, the willingness to acknowledge what you don't know is the foundation of all growth. Thank you for watching the Psych Blueprint. Now, I have a question for you. Where have you experienced the Dunning-Kruger effect in your own life? When did you realize you had significantly overestimated your abilities? Share your story in the comments below. I'm genuinely eager to read them. And if you found value in this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into applied psychology. We'll see you next time.